Good morning and welcome to DualiTEA. I'm your host, Akasha, and today we are going to talk about adaptation and moving and grooving with changes. Today, there's been a few different things that have shifted. I feel like consistently, the constant is change. That's for everybody, that's universally. The only thing that is constant is change. Anything that's stagnant or like paused is only temporary. And something that I've been really like praying for and focusing on is transitioning gracefully, because we can change all the time, but not every time is it going to be graceful. Sometimes for me, I could speak for myself when I say like most of the time is like really intense changes, and I get kind of used to that. Like if I'm gonna change, everything has to be uprooted. It has to be the tower card. But it doesn't have to be. Like you can be the temperance. You could easily just be pouring water into each cup and just flowing and growing and allowing that space for that. Most importantly, to be graceful amongst change and adapting to the differences into anything really that life may throw at you or that you may throw at yourself, is confidence within yourself and that trust within your intuition, within yourself, in all aspects of that, and to just continuously believe in you. And I feel like that's why I brought solar plexus chakra with me today. I want to play her for you guys. And yeah, I just been feeling really connected to solar plexus the past 24 hours. And I'd like to start this podcast off with playing her. So I invite you all to find a comfortable seat, or if you're moving, just a comfortable space within your being, to allow yourself to surrender to the breath, to your breath, and to the vibrations. It feels good for you. So taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Continuing to cycle your breath, going deeper and deeper. Putting a hand on your heart, another hand on your belly if that feels good. And just surrendering to any thoughts that are coming in your mind, any doubts, any fears, anything that's stopping or hindering you from fully embracing this moment. Instead of shunning them out, just acknowledging it, returning back to your breath. Sometimes things are supposed to happen and they're not supposed to be perfect. And sometimes things are supposed to happen differently than we imagine them or view them to be. And it's up to us to surrender to that. and continue to move with it. And it's also something that had came up in the Peace of Mind book, which is the daily meditations for easing stress, and it's by Amy E. Dean, which is a book that I read from often. And the gist of the page is talking about how when you receive any news, whether it be bad news or anything that could kind of set you off, how it compares it to when you were in grade school and how did you handle yourself during the first fire drill. Your first instinct was, when you heard the frightening alarm, was probably to shoot up from your desk in the wrong direction. But your teacher, calm and firm voice, told you, line up in a single file, walk, don't run. And in this page, it kind of goes into how we can be that voice to ourselves. When we feel startled or when we feel off or angry or whatever it is that we can feel, and that can come up, we can also be that calm voice to be like, it's okay. You can navigate to the next space. Give yourself permission to feel comfortable. Give yourself permission to feel whatever it is. Of course, you don't have to suppress that. You know, you get shocked, you get scared, you have a reaction. It's only natural. But then from there, allow yourself to be that peace and that safe space by talking to yourself. And allowing that space to grow in that belief within you. It's like, when are we going to start viewing ourselves as a valuable source? You know, it's like so many people can tell us something and we can take those words and be like, oh, listen, you need to get cleansed in this way. You need to do this. You need to do that. This would help you with your business. Oh, this would help you with this. Oh, you know, in your relationship, if you did this, okay. And we listen. We listen. Sometimes we don't, but sometimes we listen. A lot of times we do. What is it going to take for us to be that calming, directing voice? When are we going to realize that we're the director of our movie? We are the director. We can't just wait for someone else to direct us in the direction that we want to go. Only we know. No one else could do that for us. It's not fair to even think anyone can. Some people like to step into that role, and then you learn. Because you're like, I actually don't want to do that. It's actually not something I want to do. And that's how you can start learning to hear your own voice, even in those moments. So the affirmation that comes at the end of the page is, I can stay calm and focused, even amidst a terrible loss or disaster. Today, I'll remember that my actions can help me through any hard times. I'll repeat it. I can stay calm and focused, even in the midst of a terrible loss or disaster. Today, I'll remember that my actions can help me through any hard times. If you take a moment to kind of retrace back any time that you may have felt uncomfortable or overwhelmed or something that you're like, I don't even know what to do. No matter who may seemingly helped you on the outside, you are the only reason you shifted out of that space. So thank yourself. Give yourself appreciation. Give yourself love. Give yourself credit. Because if you don't give yourself credit, how do you expect anyone else to? That's a big thing. And that's all going down to like solar plexus. It's like, if I believe in myself and I have confidence in myself and I view myself as a credible source and I go to myself to consult and have business meetings within my being to know what I need to do next, and sit with myself, whether that looks, or you call it meditation, or whether you call it just having a business meeting with yourself, or whatever it is, brainstorming, you know, continue to give yourself those spaces to grow. You are the only person who has navigated yourself out of anything that you've experienced. Of course, people help, and it's beautiful, and we give thanks to those people. They just reminded us of things that were in us. They actually cannot do certain things. Even if you're in a hardship where you're down and out and you need to go, you're in lack of things, and people will help you. You don't have money and someone gives you money. Now, what you choose to do with that money is you. Which, if you choose to feel better or do something good within that money, like nobody can make that decision for you. You could give gratitude and you could always pay back. Of course, you can do these things and you can give thanks. And it doesn't take away from what people do for us. But all in all, as much as people want to do things for us, they can't even do it. So we need to take that credit. Take that credit and that responsibility for the good, for the bad, for the in-between. And I feel like that belief is what creates the grace, what creates the grace in the transition. That and surrender, surrender to yourself, surrender to a higher power, surrender to the greater good of all things, and to know that we don't know it all. We can't control it all. We can only control our reactions to things. So when you feel yourself wanting to react out of trauma, pause and reevaluate that for you, not only for the other people around you, but for you. These are all things that I'm like really, really working on right now. When I come on this podcast, it's always a learning experience. The whole experience of this podcast has been such a learning experience. I never thought that I would have a podcast, especially one on my own. It wasn't something that I had necessarily anticipated, and it navigated through different shifts. In the beginning, the whole reason this podcast exists in the way it does and is because of Ariel, and shout out to Ariel, sending you love wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Hope you're feeling real good this morning. And, with that, like, she seen a spark and whatever it was that she seen, and she wanted to expand on it, and she chose me to do that with her. And then she felt as if that wasn't what she wanted to do, but she felt like, no, but I feel like you're supposed to do this. And I really felt like I was supposed to do it too once I got started. But in the beginning, I was like, I don't know if I can. I'm so scared. She's like, but you're not going to be in front of people. I mean, now I'm in front of people. Now I'm live. You know what I mean? That's a whole other thing. But in the beginning, it was just me and Ariel in an office with 2 mics and tarot cards and tea. And we would sit and talk, and she would edit it. I didn't understand any of that process. I didn't know. It was not something. I didn't go to school for music. I didn't go to school for any of this kind of stuff. Like, I had media. This is funny, actually. I had media when I was in IS-24. I was reflecting on it recently, how I didn't take it serious, and I didn't take anything serious at that age. But I just thought it was pretty funny and ironic that that was the class that I was in. I was terrified of it too. Like, I would actually do the assignments and then I wouldn't hand them in because I was like, oh my God, people are going to see me doing things like an interview on myself or a dance video. I was like so petrified of being seen, so petrified of being heard. Meanwhile, that was one of the biggest traumas of like fear of not being heard, I suppose, or if I could say it in another way, just not being heard was like always like a big trauma for me, like feeling like I'm like yelling, like, like no one hear me. But yet when I had the space and opportunity to, I was absolutely petrified and just kept growing from there, and I was like, all right, can you show me how to edit? And she showed me some things, and she's like, all right, like, I'm actually going to head out. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean you're going to head out? I don't know how to do this on my own. How can I do this on my own? And a lot of time went by. And that's when I ended up doing it with Nev, and that felt good for a little bit too, our dynamic, and it was just like a different one. Now it was like I was the one who was leading. And in that, I got to learn more about myself, like, okay, well, what do I want out of the podcast? How can I work with somebody else? What is our dynamic? Are we giving 50-50? Like, do we have this one microphone? And that's when it switched to doing the podcast in my house. And it was like we had this one Yeti microphone that we're just using and speaking into about, you know, whatever kind of came up. And that's kind of been theme every time. I believe with Ariel, it was a little bit more structured, where it was like, all right, we're going to talk about this. And then sometimes we talk about other things and how it would go. And then with Nev and I, it was like, we would just be like, all right, boom, what are we talking about right now? Because I feel like that's the most important thing. It's like, what is present? I could sit here and plan things. You know, I don't know. Other people in other podcasts might sit and plan in advance for weeks. Sometimes I feel like I know. Sometimes I do. But other times I don't feel like that feels good. And I feel like it needs to be present. Okay, well, what am I experiencing today? Clearly, when I tried to plan two things, it was not what it was. And it needed to be this. So I had to surrender to that. This morning and last night, experiencing other things and just being like, okay, well, surrender. Okay, well, you didn't have time because you were working on another flyer. And that kind of fell through. So now, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit here and focus on this flyer nonstop and not get rest? Or are you going to get some sleep, wake up, make a blank slate flyer because you don't really know what you're about to talk about. So what theme are you going to even put there? And are you going to get there? And I was grateful because I got here. You know, I got here. I still made my tea for me and Kenny like I do every week. And I still had the different things that I do every week. I still got to come in here with my bearings. Like, even without knowing what I was going to speak about. You know, starting the podcast and surrendering to like my fears in the beginning and not knowing what we're even going to do with this podcast, not even knowing how it was going to go about. Not even had listened to a lot of podcasts at the time. But just trusting the process and in different ways. And for me, it's like setting that intention. I'm constantly setting that intention to grow, to evolve. Constantly setting that intention to accept, to have peace within myself, to view myself as credible, to do these things. And how can I not expect things to change all the time? Not to mention, if you're into numerology, I'm a 5. So everything is always going to be like that. It's just Mercury run. Always going to be constantly changing. So am I going to just resist my innate being? Like something my sister said, which is really interesting. It's been ringing in my head. The only consistent thing about you is that you're inconsistent. And at first I'm like, am I insulted? Or is this like facts? And I'm like, you know what? That is facts, but it doesn't have to be negative. And I'm like, well, it's kind of backwards. You know, when you think of inconsistency, you're like, oh, well, that's all over the place and that's this, that, and third. And it's like, it can be. Can be. But controlled chaos can also just be beautiful art. You know, and any artist of any way knows that we're chaotic. You know, in one way, shape, or another. Some of us may show it more than others. I feel like now I've been expanding on it. Everything in my life is art. Everything in life is art, if you choose to view it that way. I was thinking about, you know, I'm getting rid of a lot of clothes right now. I'm going through them, and I'm like, well, what is my attachment to it? And I'm like, well, it's like art. It's like I'm painting myself in a mood that I'm in. You know, my physical appearance is also art. My mental is also art. What I create out of me is also art. What I have within me is also art, just as you do. And this is what I'm choosing to view it. So art isn't always consistent. In fact, more than not, it's not. If you look at some really, I mean, there's all different artists, but the art that I tend to resonate with the most is the ones that are just once and done. That one of a kind, oh, okay, you had that and it's gone. Because you tuned into that. To replicate that is a whole other process. That's another thing. If you take something and you know, photocopy it or you do whatever it is, that's different. But like I love the idea of like you create something in that moment because it feels right for you, not because you're paid to do it again, not because you like. Of course, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but like it hits different when you look at art that someone was just like, oh, okay, I wanted to do this in the moment because I felt this, rather than I did this in the moment because I was told to do it. It just looks different. It doesn't make it any less of art piece or less beautiful or valuable. It just hits different. And I feel like that is what I do with my podcast. It's like sometimes, like when I did the chakra series, we knew that we were going to talk about the chakra, but we didn't know exactly what we were going to talk about. If you go to those episodes, sometimes we're like talking about the textbook type experience in it for a moment, and then we'll go into a whole other experience where it's like this person's personal experience with their chakra bowl and how that chakra energy that's within all of us was emanating within them throughout their process of having it. So it's really interesting how we can all have a perspective, and there is no right and wrong. There is no right and wrong. There's just different perspective. I mean, of course, that could be debated. Is there right and wrong? Like, are you doing this? Is that I instead of being right and wrong, it's more like, is this just solely for a selfish gain, or is this for the benefit of all, rather than right and wrong? I would word it in that way, and in that it could be exciting. You could be like, wow, we don't agree at all, but I could appreciate that you think that way, although I don't. Although you don't think the way I think. I could appreciate your consistency in something. Like, I can appreciate that you do the same thing every day. I think it's beautiful when certain people do the same thing every day. Like, they have their coffee or their routine in the morning. I think that that's really awesome. Like, I've tried to be that person. I feel like I can be at times, but just not too long, because I have to go create my own like in the morning. Sometimes I want to wake up and I want to have tea. Other times I want to wake up and want to play the bowls. Sometimes I want to. It isn't consistent for me, because I honor that. I'm learning to love that. I'm happy that I'm not consistent. I feel like it would be boring for me. Certain things would be good, like, consistent. I'm here, boom, Wednesday. There's the masculine, right? The structure. Then you have the divine masculine, right? And then you have the divine feminine that comes in and just has the space to do whatever it wants. I think these two things are really beautiful and needed. I don't believe that one's greater than the other. I certainly will navigate more on the divine feminine, like chaos, than I will on the divine masculine structure. The world as a whole does operate more in a masculine way. If you look at society, if you look at the way we view certain things, okay, well, we have to have this in order and this and this and this and this, and it's like structured and it's very like to the point, which is needed. Absolutely. That's something that I work to find my balance in, right? But innately, that just like chaos of just like doing what you want in that moment and just being what you are and being free is something I feel more comfortable in. And now, to find my balance, I'm learning to just structure that. So Wednesday is that cap. So Wednesday I come here and I know podcast, right? Wednesday, 10:30 live. I have the routine, certain things, like boom, like the tea. I have the cards sometimes, but it's not always. And that's the container. It's like the fence. It's like, okay, you have this fence because if you want other people to participate in what it is or view what it is that you're doing, you need to create a focal point. So if I just wanted to be me and be chaotic and free, and I'm all over the place, you're not going to be able to catch me because you're just going to be seeing everything everywhere, right? You'll be missing a lot. So now if you put a fence and you're like, okay, here is your comfortable space, do whatever you want. That, I feel, is the golden rule for everyone and everything. I feel like that's the golden rule in relationships. That's the golden rule in any dynamic is like, here is your designated space to feel safe. Know that you have a protection barrier around you. No one's going to get to you because I got you. You got you. I got me, right? But I'm be free over here. That's the balance. Because if you're just like, I'm free and do whatever I want, that can be unbalanced. And that could also not factor in how you affect other people. When you're navigating that space and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever I want, you're not considering other people all the time. You got to read the room. You got to see the environment. You could still do something you want and have it be in the parameters of what feels good for everybody. And I feel like that's the optimal balance, is when you can tune into any space and any place and know that and prep yourself for that while it comes up. Not prep, that's what, like, you know, whatever, I said the wrong word, but it's just like, tune into that, become aware of that. Or when you're navigating and like, okay, I'm being way too structured right now, maybe I should release and let go a little bit. Maybe I'm too lax right now. Maybe I should structure up right now. Maybe I should organize more things. And it's about shifting and adapting into these two spaces without dread, resentment, and guilt. It's okay to become aware of your imbalance. Your intention is to fix it. Your intention is to balance yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you feel yourself imbalanced. That's only going to create you even more into unbalance or disharmony. You're like, oh, okay, boom. Oh, I'm imbalanced. Bet, that's exciting because now I can know what I can do. If I'm all the way over here, now I know I can just shift a little bit to get into the center frame. And then boom. Now I'm balancing the shot. I'm not going to hate myself because I'm over here. Even if I did the whole episode over here, I'm not going to hate myself that I didn't realize. Next time, I'm just going to be like, oh, wow, be more aware of how you're sitting. Maybe fix your posture. I'm going to do that right now because I just noticed it. But I'm not going to hate myself or be guilty that I've been Hunchback of Notre Dame most of this episode. It's okay. Just have compassion, you know? And that's the grace. That's the beauty. That's what I feel like, you know. And if that resonates for anybody, then that's great. And if it doesn't, then that's also great. Either way, that's what's coming up for me today. It's interesting how the episodes in which it always aligns. Sometimes it's like I'll know an episode is going to be like, okay, boom, this episode's going to be about surrendering to your ego. And that so happens to be like everything that's going on in my life or in the people around me's life. But then on the other hand, sometimes I won't have an idea of what I'm going to come on and do. And it's just the same thing. It just always ends up in the same place. It's like, are you going to go through the front door or the back door? You're still going to get in your house. Are you going to be mad that you went through the front door or back door? Sometimes you might even go through the window because you forgot your keys. Are you gonna hate yourself for it? No, you're gonna be okay. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get in there, no matter what it is. I'm going to get to the place that I need to get to, because I trust myself. I'm valuable in what I have to say, and I know that I created this consistency. I created this structure of doing this, and I trust what I've created already. So all I need to do is show up. Show up fully and presently in that moment. And you're good. You're Gucci. That's it. So that's what I got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. I kind of want to ding the bowl again. You guys are down? So I want to pray in a really good way to everybody that's tuning in, everyone that's listening, everyone that will listen. May these vibrations and these sounds of the solar plexus bowl Lift your vibrations, lift your energy, your confidence within yourself, and really hone in on that sun energy within you, that core identity, for you to know what it is that you need to do. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not for the rest of your life, but now. For you to remember and be reminded that you are your compass. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.